County Councilmember Denny Taveras. Did you know it's Welcoming Week? Welcoming Week is a time when communities across the country celebrate their immigrant and refugee residents. This is the first time we celebrate Welcoming Week in Prince George's County, though we have long been a community that receives newcomers with open arms. I'm partnering with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System to honor the myriad of ways immigrants have contributed to our thriving county and to celebrate our welcoming spirit. I hope you enjoy the programming and celebrate the immigrants that make Prince George's County great every single day. So with that, thank you. Have a great time. I love you. Los quiero.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Nick. I'm with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. We're so excited to have you here. Bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Nicolás. Trabajo con la Biblioteca del Condado de Prince George aquí en Maryland. Tonight is going to be a really fabulous chat about Hispanic literature in Hispanic Heritage Month. And we're going to go through and introduce all of our very special guests. Most fierce chicas who live in this area and are amazing bookstagrammers who are known all over the world now, I'm sure. And without further ado, first we're going to say Happy Independence Day to everyone from Mexico, which is everyone but me on here today. So that's super exciting. I'm half Honduran, and we had our day yesterday along with El Salvador and some others. So happy day to all the Mexican folks in the world out there. And if we can all just introduce each other one by one, tell us your name, where you live, how you got into book stuff, and if you have another life beyond books. Ofe.
Oh, okay. I was like, no, you guys start. But okay. I was like, no. Hi, how you doing? I'm Ofelia. You can call me Ofe. And I'm originally from Mexico, and I'm a writer. So it was like kind of blend together. That I was reading to learning more about writing and to have fun with it, pretty much. And how I got into bookstagram, I don't really call myself a bookstagrammer. I just post about books I like, and I just do it for fun because I love it and because I read the books I am interested in. And I just finished a master in Latin American Lit, and I read the books that they forced me to read too, and I sure those too. Some of them are fun and some of them are good. But that's kind of like a super general idea of my book life, if that's even an idea. But anyway, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, thank you. Mm-hmm. Alejandra?
Hi, I'm Alejandra Montoya-Boyer. I am a bookstagrammer, I guess, at Libros _Coffee. I wanted to post about books. That didn't really start as a bookstagram. I just wanted to share the books that I like. My friends would ask for book recommendations, and I read a lot of Latinx and other BIPOC books, and so I started taking pictures and started on my personal account. And then I wanted to kind of grow it and see if it was worth. I would follow like Lupita and others that came before me. I would follow them online and get book recommendations. So I was like, someone might be interested in mine. And that's where that came from. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and desperately missed home and want to go back. And in my normal day-to-day, I work on economic policy and programs for the National Association of Counties.
Oh, awesome. We know them.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. And Lupita.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lupita Aquino. I was actually born in Mexico, but I was raised in Montgomery County, so very close to PG, but not quite close. And I have lived here practically all my life, with the exception of living in the Midwest for a few years, which was kind of strange, but I am a bookstagrammer. I would call myself that. And I started just like everybody else, just kind of sharing books about that I was reading that I liked. And, you know, I think that every year, I like to say this every year, the mission kind of changes. And, you know, I feel like I'm growing with it. And I've become such a different reader since starting my Instagram account. And I think, I feel like for that reason alone, I recommend it to anyone to kind of get involved with the community and just, you know, there's more than we think to books and what goes in the works of making them and getting them in the hands of readers like us who often don't have access to the books that we seek ourselves in. So I think that's really important. Outside of that, I am a clinical trial specialist. I don't do anything related to books, but I guess that's what makes both things so awesome and interesting and something really great to have in my life.
Awesome.
And I'm so excited to be here with everybody because I feel like I really honor and I'm super just excited to be here with every one of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and welcome to everyone who's joined us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Feel free to share this broadcast out with folks on your platforms. We'd be very thrilled to reach as many people as possible. So I know there are going to be some amazing book recommendations, some of which you've heard about and some of which might be completely new to you. And just to give a plug for the library, the Prince George's County Memorial Library System serves almost 1 million people in suburban Washington, D.C. on the Maryland side. Prince George's County is the second largest county in the state of Maryland after Montgomery County. I think we're the coolest. I'm paid to be biased, so we'll just leave it there. We have almost 20% of the population is Latin or Hispanic with the background, and the public schools has roughly the same number of people who are speaking Spanish, either as their second or as their primary language. So we are a thriving community of Hispanic immigrants and Hispanic American folks who have the history of the ethnicity. So any of the books that we're talking about today, you can check out through the library. And if we don't have it readily available, you can put in a request for us to order the book, either as an ebook, audiobook, or as a print copy. We are offering curbside service at 16 of our branches. You can visit our website, pgcmls.info, to get all the info about that stuff. And you do not have to be a county resident to get a library card with us. So anyone in the DMV area can get a free virtual library card to access our ebook collection. Our collection is unique. Whereas the rest of Maryland, except for Montgomery County, shares a collection. So we have shorter wait times for just about everything, even shorter than DC. So check it out and play the library ebook game, which is actually a kind of fun thing to do. So before we jump into book recommendations, I just want to kind of wrap the concept of Bookstagram up into a little bow for those of you who might be new to it. Bookstagram is basically an organic community of people on Instagram who talk about books with each other, who share book recommendations. We like to photograph books in cool places. I have a friend who photographed himself in a pool donut holding a book because that was the cover image on the book, and silly things like that bring us joy. And it's a really great way to learn about new authors, learn about topics, and to also mobilize when there are crazy things going on in the publishing industry or in the country. We will try and avoid sad topics like that, but it's there, so I'm sure we'll hit it a bit. The first thing I'd like to throw out as a question before we dive into the book recommendations is, what does own voices literature mean to you as a person, and what do you think people perceive of that term? Anyone can jump in. And I can talk all day, so save the audience from me.
I'll start. I think for me, own voices was a new term to me coming to Bookstagram, and it might be newish anyway. But as I understand it and how I perceive it is, it's, authors and reviewers that have the experience, the lived experience or heritage or background or identity of the book or topic of the book. So for me, I'm Chicana, a U.S. born Mexican American, and so someone like Sally Fajardo on seeing her book Sabrina and Corina would be an own voices book. So my identity growing up in the Southwest, my experience, one of my many experiences, but I think that's how I understand it. But it can get really complicated because there are, especially for Latinx communities, like people often say like, oh, this is a own voice book for you, and it's coming from a Colombian American author or a Dominican American. And I don't know if that's own voice. Like, yes, we're all Latinx, but those are really different experiences.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. I think what you're also trying to say is talk about intersectionality with the fact that, for example, I am Mexican, Mexican, but I am also queer, so lesbian, right? So I feel like there are definitely aspects to it that don't always cover. And I think when we're thinking about own voices reviewers, I can be an own voice reviewer for a top, book that features and has characters, a main character that is a lesbian, right? But if the lesbian is white or in or Indian or something else, then I might not be an own voice reviewer in that. So I think that there is nuances to it, but you nailed it. Yeah, I would agree with everything you said.
And I agree with both of you because that's how I see it. Stories that come from that community, pretty much. Yeah. So that's the way I see it. It's not someone else telling the stories for us.
Awesome. If anyone wants to do some research, there's a big thing that happened in publishing earlier this year, which was really bad, but it led to positive change and outcry and such. And some of this discussion of own voices has to do with what needs to be fixed in the systems that exist to put money and power behind certain authors and certain books. And the conversation of own voices really took off as just how to fix the systemic wrongs, systemic racism, similar that we've been talking about with Black Lives Matter and the violence against Black people. There are systems in place that don't equally support the different voices that need to be at the table. And these own voices stories have existed in literature for the Hispanic community since literature began. But the US publishing industry has been very slow to kind of equally support the authors who would be represented as own voices in different contexts. And I think this has been a really special example of the Latin community coming together to lead the charge for other groups. And for example, in the LGBTQ plus community, the notion of own voices hasn't quite gotten to the same place, but it's getting there, and it's really exciting. And some of that gets into other publishing issues, but I'll leave that there, and we'll go for it, Lupita.
No, I was going to mention that's like a little bit more touchy too, right? Because I think in the queer community, you don't want to force someone to come out. So Correct. Even if writing outside of their own voice or whatever they identify as, I think it's a little bit more complicated in that situation, in that scenario. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. And just as you mentioned, I think outside of support for authors, I think that it's what mainstream publishing, like who it defaults, right? Who the default reader is. And then the emphasis on that, like, okay, well, our default reader is that white women who are housewives buy a lot of books, right? And that's our audience. So I think sometimes what publishing does is they purchase books and they want books and they feed into narratives of books that would only, would be appealing to that audience. So I think that's another part too, is where sometimes an own voice book just doesn't feel like it's enough for publishing. I think a lot of authors struggle with that.
Totally. Well, let's switch over to the fun, and we'll I'm sure keep coming back to this topic throughout because it is such a big part of what we're all thinking about now. And basically the format today is for everyone who's tuning in, we're just going to take turns giving you book recommendations. We're going to be completely editorializing, and these are personal opinions. My statements do not reflect official positions of the library system today. This is me as a reader, for better or for worse. And we'd love to have you chime in with us on the chat wherever you're watching from. So YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Let us know what you think about the book recommendations, if you've read them, if you have books to suggest, and we'll keep track of the whole list for folks who want to see all the recommendations. So let's start off with some contemporary fiction. And if anyone wants to jump in first, go for it. Otherwise, I will come up with something.
I'll let you go first, Nick.
To you guys.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's see. I put my piles everywhere. Okay, here we go. This is a brand new book. It's called Don't Ask Me Where I'm From by Jennifer De Leon, and she is an educator. This, I believe, is her debut book. And she's based in Boston, which I'm from Boston. And when I read this description, even though like this is clearly not marketed necessarily to probably the stereotypical male book buyer, especially because it's YA2, but this jumps out at me for multiple reasons. And I haven't read it yet, so I'm just going off of what I've read about the description. It's basically the story of a young woman who has Hispanic heritage, is living in Boston, is bused to one of the suburban schools, which is very white. I lived in a district like that for most of my time growing up. And there it gets into her heritage and the things that she's facing, and also the kind of dueling family identity issues that are going on, and also relationship challenges that are going on. And to me, when I saw this description, like this is a book that I never knew of books like this existing when I was a kid. And even though there's probably elements of this story that are very different from my growing up, because I grew up with a certain amount of privilege, having a white dad and living in the suburbs, this will be able to, I'm sure, shed a lot of light on the experiences that people were dealing with around me at the same time as I was in class with them and such. And I'm really, really excited to read it. And part of me is a little apprehensive of it, but I'm very excited, and I'm so thrilled that this type of story is being told and picked up by the big publishers and such. Has anyone read it yet?
No. But title alone, I'm in.
I have it right here, but it's in my TBR. Yeah. That's longer than my read list. My TBR is way long.
Awesome. So that's my first one.
Well, I already mentioned this one, and I was planning to mention it already, but I absolutely love this book with like all of my heart and soul. Sabrina and Corina by Khalifa Hardo Anstein, I think is her second last name. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. I'm very sensitive about my name, and so apologies, Kali, if you're probably not watching anyway.
Her first name very often, and she'll tell you it's not fun.
Oh, good. So I've practiced that myself. I've gotten much better at correcting people mispronouncing my name. It is, for me, I would consider Own Voices. I grew up in Nuevo Mexico in New Mexico. She's from Colorado. And the stories are very much about mestiza and indigenous Latinas in that space in the Southwest, and in the Mexico or the part of America that was once Mexico. And I am not a big short story reader. In fact, I've really struggled, and Bookstagram has grown my love of short stories, but this is one that's like such an outlier for me. I love it so much. I even have a print by the same artist because I love this book that a friend gifted me, hanging on my wall. But she's brilliant and writing Latinas in particular, like we're tough to get, and like the nuances. And I think that's where Own Voices thrives, because you can just like, man, the beauty with which she writes. So recommend it.
Awesome, thank you.
So we're doing fiction, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Fiction. Okay.
Do you want to go next, Ofe, or you want me to?
I surprisingly don't have fiction. I only have Pedro Paramo with fiction, which is not really. I mean, it's more magical realism, but I'll talk to it after you, because I have nonfiction poetry. I was trying to do different stuff, and go for it, Lupita.
I am going to talk about Healthy Street by Naima Peter. It's really good. It's such a good book. I don't even know how to describe it. It covers race, class, gentrification. It's set in New York. I feel like I really enjoyed it because I spoke to her recently I got to speak to her recently, and I remembered a lot about the mother-daughter relationship in the book and just how complicated that was, and just the cycle of motherhood and being a woman. And it just it was really powerful. And I also wanted to bring it up because she does have a brand new book coming up that I can't wait to read. And I think everybody else should be equally excited because Naima is a very, very amazing writer. I think another thing that really pulled me into her book is just the writing. It's definitely like just compelling, and you just want to keep reading. The characters will annoy you, and at least in this one, the one main character you just kind of struggle with. But her new book that's coming out is What's Mine and Yours, and it's coming out next year. So it's like, read this, and then you don't have to wait that long to get another book by an author you're going to end up loving. So, and
Very cool.
Another rec for fiction, but somebody else go.
Do you want me to talk about Pedro Paramo, even though it is not as contemporary as
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, okay. So this is one of my favorite books, Pedro Paramo, by Juan Rulfo. This is one of like, I don't want to say the first magical realism book ever, but I want to say it because it's my opinion. So, and even Gabriel Garcia Marquez was inspired, and after reading Pedro Paramo, he was inspired to actually write 100 Years of Solitude. So, and I have read it a few times, and each time I read it, it gives me something differently. Because it's crazy, it's magical realism. You know, people are dead, people are ghosts over here. And it's about this Juan Preciado, he goes and looks for his father in this town. I was about to spoil it, but I won't. Where crazy things are happening. So, and honestly, like at the beginning, I was like, I don't understand this book. And it's like, what just happened? I don't know. So I just threw it away the first time. And then I went back to it and kind of reread it. And every time I read it, it's a really short book. And then you understand something differently. And then you understand kind of like the nuance of, you know, like storytelling and all the magical realism that has inspired like many, many, many writers, no, to write today. So that's why I keep like recommending Pedro Paramo. And if you speak Spanish, read it in Spanish because the translations, they're okay. But yeah. Translations in English, I can recommend you later on. Yeah, but it's really good. And just really quick, I'm not going to talk about them, but my, well, actually, someone else go, and I'll talk about these books later.
I just wanted to ask you and Ale and Nick too, in terms of, you know, I feel like magical realism gets really zoned in to Latinx literature. And so I was just curious about everybody, like, how do you deal or handle that magical realism? It's just funny because I think some people hate it and some people like it. And I'm always really interested in the Latinx reader and how they feel about magical realism.
One professor once told me that no one is writing magical realism anymore because magical realism was what it was, and that's it. Like, we have to name the next generation of writing something else. We have to make up a name, because that's something different. So it's like the modernism, or like the boom, like Latin American boom. It's over. It happens during this time, and that's it. And the same happens with magical realism. It was during this time, and these are the writers, and that's it. And we're moving on, but we are inspired by magical realism. But that was, and I was like, really, oh my God, you know, he's right. Maybe it's over and we are creating something different, you know, like something that it doesn't have a name yet. So I don't know. That's what I think. Yeah.
It's interesting because the majority of the first Latinx books I ever read were magical realism, because that's what was out and popular, like Water for Chocolate and 100 Years of Solitude. I fell in love with Gabriel Garcia Marquez at the time and like really loved magical realism, but I feel like it was kind of its time. And now I don't know if I connect to it in the same way. I also don't know if I believe that some things that are categorized as magical realism are magical realism. It's like this, I agree, like there is this like push to make Latinx books, especially like of that generation. All of it gets put into magical realism when it's like some books are just, I don't know, fiction. But I feel like if I read newer or contemporary magical realism, I wouldn't connect to it in the same way, and I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Nick,
Nick. Yeah.
For me, I haven't read enough of the classics in the genre yet to feel like I can make an informed opinion. I'm generally wary of the labels, even applying to the classics, just because I think we can get so skewed in our readings of books before we even approach them. Which same in music. I've come from a music background. Like it's a romantic or it's a modernist thing. It's going to put it into a category without letting you kind of experience it fresh. So we'll see what happens. I think I need another couple years to get caught up enough to have a good opinion on it. Cool. Do we want to switch to poetry inspired verse? I know we've all got a few, or at least one that should fall into one of those buckets.
I think I have one, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it. You look
Oh,
ready.
should I go first? Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's in verse, but I would say it's kind of in vignettes. So it's In the Dream House by Carmen Alvarado. It's nonfiction. It's basically about her relationship, very abusive in the sense of mentally abusive relationship with an ex-girlfriend of hers. And outside of that, it beautifully navigates, kind of how she got out of it, how difficult it was. And it's just a very powerful book. Her writing is extraordinary. I mean, I'd recommend it. I recommend it all the time. It's one of my favorite books.
It's an amazing book. And not to get too personal, but I connected to it in so many ways, in ways that I never expected. And it's so beautiful. She's just a magician with words.
Well, and I think the thing she does too in the book is that she shines a light because it happens all the time, but in the queer community, violence against women is not often talked about, or violence between women. And the other thing too, it's not an actual violent act. She was never hit, right? But the psychological damage between somebody that was verbally abusive, or that, you just don't know until you know. I feel like sometimes with books, you find the language and you find the experience, and then you put that all into what you're living through, and you're like, wow, I've been through that. And that makes sense now. So yeah, not to get personal, for sure. I could see how powerful that is. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, you want one?
I have poetry.
Go for it.
I have two poetry that I want to recommend. First, Natalie Diaz and the Post-Colonial Law poem. I'm going to be honest. I'm not a poetry reader. I don't consider myself a poetry reader, and that's why I read poetry too. So I read a poem a day, and I read it out loud, so I can feel it. I can feel the poem, because it feels way too different when you do it out loud and then you just read it. I don't know. I think I can feel it more when I do that. So and Natalie Diaz, this is her second collection of stories, and her poems are intertwined, and she kind of explores the bodies of the indigenous and Latinx, brown and black people in a way that is just really amazing. And sometimes I just have to reread it to refeel it again, and it's really good, and it's filled with grief and a lot of joy, and I think you guys are gonna enjoy it really a lot. And I have a second one, but I'm gonna let Alejandra go first.
Oh, so I am not a big poetry reader, and so I have it's a novel, but it's written in verse. The Poetess, Elizabeth Acevedo, a DC local, so support, a local DC writer. As a non-poetry reader, as someone that gets easily confused by poetry, this was so wonderful and beautiful to me. So it's written as if, it looks visually like poetry, and it's written in verse, and feels like poetry, but is telling the story of a young Black Latinx woman in New York. And it's just, I just love it. And after living in New York and not that I have any of the same experiences in any way, but like there was just so much here that I loved. And, yeah, as a non-poetry reader, this felt like intro to poetry, but in an amazing way. And all three of her books are amazing. I love everything she's like ever done and said, and I'm obsessed with her. But this is just like, I think I saw head nods from everybody because it's just, I mean, it's the best.
It's an amazing book. Yeah. I remember I finished it when I was at Costco and I was crying by myself at Costco. I was like waiting for my car to be done. It's not that I was buying stuff. But I remember that and I was like, oh my God, what should I do? I just finished it. It's amazing. Yeah. Amazing book.
Awesome. Well, do we want to segue into our Elizabeth Acevedo Love Fest to get through the other two? Because I think they're all on our, on our list here. Where did I put my... I put the other one somewhere. Does anyone have the most recent book on their list? There it is. Yeah.
Clap when you land.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but it's about it's the same concept, kind of like in verse, and it's about two sisters that found each other after the plane where the dad was flying. He died, right? That's what it says in the cover. I'm not spoiling anything. And they found each other, and that's kind of what it is about. And I'm really looking forward to read this one because it's just so beautiful the way she writes.
That book is, I've never read a book that was able to kind of put forward the duality of the different experiences of being Hispanic and American in the same time, and like the way that the lived experiences of the two people differ so drastically, even though they're connected by the same father and are immersed in elements of the same culture. And then, like, despite those differences, things happen and you see kind of how that all shakes out, which is really fascinating. But it was just like, she's one of those writers, just like Jason Reynolds, who's another local favorite, of course, who they're able to share these experiences that are just done in a way that's so unique and draws people in to be more curious about learning about each other, which is really cool. And then this one is just,
yeah, it's a great
this
one.
cover, you want to eat it, literally. It's like all the fruit. So this is her penultimate or second most recent book, With the Fire on High, set in Philadelphia, with a teenager who lives with her grandmother, I think it was, and going through this whole experience of going through high school and the challenges that high school girls deal with and Hispanic people deal with growing up in an American city, and what that means with your dreams and the doors that are open to you or not. And it's just wonderful. You feel like you're in the home with them. You feel like you feel like they become your family, and just really lovely. Highly recommend this book as well. Cool.
Basically, read everything she ever writes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right when it comes out, because she'll have another one in 12 months, basically.
I
will.
will. Back to back, right?
Articles and everything. So
Wow.
just everything.
I recently actually read a poem of hers as someone who doesn't read poetry. I think it's called, I'm going to get the name wrong. It's long. It's something like to the woman that protests in front of the Planned Parenthood around the corner of my office or something like that. And it's like the best poem I've ever read. And she's just brilliant.
And she's an amazing person as well.
Yes. And she used to teach in Prince George's County back in the day.
She did.
So
With Clint Smith too, right? Another poet. Didn't they teach in the same school?
potentially, I don't know enough of the details of the story.
Oh, Glenn Smith. Yeah, I saw them in an event together. So that's why.
Cool.
Oh, I was there too, Alejandra.
Everything comes back to Prince George's County somehow. So we'll, another segue, because I get easily distracted, thinking poetry and using poetry to get us over to nonfiction, maybe memoirs. This is a collection of poems by Richard Blanco, who was the first Hispanic and first out gay man to be an inauguration poet. He did the poem at the second Obama inauguration. He's Cuban American, grew up in Florida. The iconic poem from the inauguration was amazing, and it led me to kind of learn more about his work. And this is a collection of his poems called Looking for the Gulf Motel, which is just one of his publications that give you a flavor of his voice. And then he also has a memoir that's more recent, called The Prince of Los Cocuyas, which talks about his growing up in Miami and his family, and really, really fun, really crazy, really inspiring. One of the things that I love about his writing, both in the poetry side and then also on the memoir side, is that he has a way of making you laugh really hard, cry really hard, think critically about yourself really hard, and then also like apply that to thinking about the broader strokes that we deal with in society. And especially in some of his poetry, like he can go really heavy, but throw in some really crazy, sassy Latin jokes that you kind of have to at least be the descendant of an immigrant from Latin America to get them. But when you do get him, it's just mind-blowingly awesome. And I don't know, he's a cool guy. And he's very nice too, if you ever get a chance to go to one of his events. So this is one of his poetry collections, Looking for the Gulf Motel. And then he's also an architect. So like he has this whole other career like so many people do, even though he probably could be a writer full-time now, but it's pretty awesome. So any memoirs or other poetry things want to throw out?
I don't have I wouldn't call it, I mean, it is kind of like a memoir. It's called My Time Among the Whites by Jenny Capo Cruzet. It's, you've read it?
Yes.
I'm trying to get it right in the camera. It is phenomenal. It's an essay, and I guess I would describe it in the same way you just described your book. It'll make you cry, laugh, get angry, just a mixture of emotions. It's basically, it's got essays about anything and everything from Disneyland and how she experienced that as a Latina. It talks about her white past, how, you know, her experience with being white passing. It talks about what it's like to be a Latina in academia. It's got so much. I read it long ago, and I still often think about it. And it's another book I always recommend. And it's kind of memoirish, except it's written in essays.
And if you imagine a satirical expression of Ibram Kendi, like this is what it is. It is so like she just digs in and goes at people with just like pure facts of like where they're being so racist and biased and stuff. And I'm sure it is jarring to some people who are on the white fragility side of those encounters, but it's really educational. And she lays it out in a way that is, it's searing and direct, but it's not disrespectful. It's like just trying to be blunt about it so that you can be better in your interactions with people. And it's a fabulous book, one of my favorites in the last couple of years.
I mean, of the situations that she talks about in her essay, in which she encounters a student who basically tells her that white privilege doesn't exist. She had that exact thing happen to her when her book came out. And, the students actually burned copies of her other book, her first book. And so the violence behind that, you're right, the white fragility, it's the worst. Yeah.
But it's so good in the details, like even just visually the details. Someone pointed this out to me, I didn't even catch it. Her name on the book cover is like underlined with the little squigglies that show up when you misspell a word in Word. Yeah. And I didn't even notice that. And I did a book club of that book, and someone pointed that out, and I was like, "That's my name. It always has the squiggly," and it just felt so like the details of getting different experiences and how that connects it's brilliant. So I have a memoir by a poet, which is, I guess, in line with what we're talking about. Children of the Land by Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. He is talking about the experience of being undocumented and coming to the United States. I can't recommend it enough. I think it's on par with other books around the immigrant experience in terms of like the undocumented Americans and kind of the putting the actual system of the United States on blast instead of like coddling readers through like this whole like immigrants come here just to work hard kind of narrative, which is also true, but does not really get at the severe violence and complicity of the United States and its policies. And I've read a lot of nonfiction on that, but this was a different kind of like very personal, very beautifully written, like lyrical memoir about that experience. And it happened to come out like a week or 2 weeks or very not long after another book that I won't even mention that we could all probably have full arguments and sessions around. But I thought the juxtaposition of like this like white savior book about an experience versus like an actual person's experience. It's just so good. Read it. I can't describe it and do it justice.
But her husband is Irish. Anywho, we'll contain it because that's best like uncovered in with margaritas, I think.
Get started. We could be here all night.
I know.
I didn't know if we could drink alcohol because it's library setting, so I wasn't sure.
Oh, you're totally welcome to. You're,
okay.
you're
I want because this is already too late. Next time.
Next time, totally. We'll have a reboot.
I have like a couple, like 3 memoirs, but I'm gonna talk about this one because it's called Capirotada, Nogales memoir by Alberto Alvarado. I mentioned this because he was the beginner poet laureate in Arizona, and I live a long time in Arizona, and I read this book when I was living here in Maryland. So it's a memoir about his life in Nogales, in a border town, and how he used to like go back and forth, how it was the same town, you know, back in the day. Like the borders, they were not that significant, and it's a blend of essays and poetry, and it's just really amazing and heartbreaking about family, about Mexican families living in just this town that is divided by a border. But it's the same town, it's the same people, you know, we know each other and everything. And when I read it here in Maryland, I didn't realize, I am from Sonora, from the north, and I live a long time in Arizona. So I didn't realize, I knew that I was in the border, but I didn't know I was from the border, you know, from the border states, until I moved to Maryland, that there was nothing I could do anymore. So that kind of like inspired me for like my writing in a lot of sense. And it kind of gives you a perspective of how was in the 50s, like the border in the 50s, and how it's now. So it's a little bit heartbreaking and inspiring in many ways. So that's why I really love it and how it talks about the border. So that's like my memoir recommendation. I have 2 more, but you guys.
It also has a great recipe for capirotada.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for anyone that's looking for nice dessert, capirotada is Mexican bread pudding, and it's delicious.
And it's like a little bit of everything. So that's in his book. It's a little bit of everything, like essays, poetry, like everything is blended. So that's why he called it capirotada, because it's you just put stuff in it, and then there you go. You have a dessert. So that's why I call it capirotada.
Very cool. I'm gonna screen share capirotada because it's just.
Oh, do you want me to?
I want to.
Oh, okay. Oh, like
it looks so good.
So good.
Yeah.
Anywho, slight distractions. Food is always a good distraction. So I'll throw out a combo. And I'm gonna pick them all up here. Combo, memoir, fiction. But we'll start with the memoirs. These 2, which are by Reyna Grande, and I have not read this one yet, which was the earlier memoir about her youth. Which is fictionalized in a novel. Oh, I think we lost Lupita, but she'll come back. So this is on my TBR as the next read. And she also wrote this one, which is about her time kind of coming of age, college forward, called A Dream Called Home. She is Mexican-American, grew up in Mexico and then moved over here. And like when we talk about own voices, her story is the story that is like a definitive account of the contemporary experience of coming to the United States. And she's one of those authors who, similar to Elizabeth Acevedo, when you stay with her over multiple books, you get more bits of the story and the more pieces of the puzzle that you can put together. And I give Lupita full credit for leading me on to Reyna and adding her to my TBRs generally from a couple years ago when we did a project together. So I'm very super excited to read her earlier memoir now. And this is her later memoir. I found really interesting because it's a part of the story that you don't really hear about in depth. Like this is an immigrant getting herself through college and surviving and taking care of her younger sibling as a young adult and dealing with the whole process of like trying to establish a life and becoming self-sufficient financially in the situation. And it's really, really beautifully written, powerful story. And it kind of leaves you hopeful, even though there's a lot of hardship that she goes through in the book.
You stole my
Oh no! I'm sorry. Instead of talking with my hands, I'm talking with my books.
I'm just kidding. No,
there you go. There's the fictional version.
I think everybody would recommend Reyna Grande.
Yeah.
I read these ones because of you guys, Nick and Lupita, with the book club. Remember? Yeah. And I actually added these to my thesis because of you guys. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I studied it. That's why it's like this. So I studied like the translation into Spanish, and that's because of you, because of the events you did.
Wow, well, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone want to go with another rec? It doesn't have to be nonfiction or whatever you want.
Okay, I don't have a nonfiction rec. I do have a story rec. It's it's Love War Stories by Elisa Rodriguez, and it's. You know, I'm starting to realize I really love short stories, and I don't know how to say that. Only because I feel like I'm supposed to not like them. I don't know.
You can write whatever you want.
I personally love short stories, and this is just one of those collections that I feel like didn't get enough love or praise, and I feel like people need to read it because her character development is so good. And I'm talking like I know writing. I don't know writing, but I know that, you know, I feel like when you read the character, they feel real, they feel alive, like they feel like people you know. That's what I mean by character development. So I think each one of her stories just really just sings. And this collection, I wish more people would have read it and picked it up. So I'll talk about tomorrow on Instagram.
Cool.
It's a great collection. That was the when I first started my bookstagram. As I said, it kind of started with like a group of friends, and so I was trying to like start this book club where me and my girlfriends just like drink and talk about books, which is all book clubs are.
Amazing.
And we started with that book, and it was like a good one. That it was like most of my friends are like not as big of a reader as I am, so it was small enough, short enough, and you know. A Latina author talking about bad relationships. We could all connect with that. I can't talk about, but this is a fiction book, but I can talk about books, Latino authored books, and not talk about Fruit of the Drunken Tree. It is one of my favorite books of all time. And Ingrid Rojas Contreras, who's the author, is like my favorite ever, as Lupita has coined. She's my literary crush. I'm obsessed with her. Mostly her eyeliner game. I'm like trying. It's not working, but
you got to go bigger and bold.
No, I'm not quite there. I can do the bold lip. I don't know.
Just go in and just go up. So.
Yeah. She's so good. She once said on Instagram that she would give me a tutorial, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm melting just that she offered."
Oh
I died.
Wow.
The book is the author herself is Colombiana, and she moved to the United States in, I think, like around 8 or something as a kid. And her book is told in dual perspective as a young kid growing up in Colombia during the Pablo Escobar era, and And then the other perspective is a lower income, her babysitter, her nanny, and it really is talking about the class dynamic, Colombia during that era, a racial dynamic, and a lot of, privilege in the experience of different Latin American countries. This one in particular is about Colombia, but I think that's something that as Mexicanos we can all understand, or across Latin America. It's just really good. It's one of those books, I think it was billed as magical realism, or like there was a lot of comparisons to Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I'm like, because they're both Colombian, I don't quite understand. I got into like a big argument once with this white woman about, she was like, it wasn't enough like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I was like, she wasn't trying to be, I don't think.
No.
But also, it's like, look at this cover. Like, talk about, wrong direction. Talk about cover love and like pictures that your books you just want to take pictures of. It's perfect for instance.
We need a new name for this generation of literature. Yeah.
Yes.
No magical realism. We need a new name.
It's not magical realism, in my opinion, at all.
Cool.
I have two, but I think I want to mention this one before time's up. Gloria Salduga, Borderlands, La Frontera, Where to Begin. Read it, everyone read it. I think as a Mexican who was trying to write in English, and people told me different workshops that, why did you just, write in Spanish? And I remember like one, she was Latina actually. She told me, oh, I remember I have a thick accent like yours, and I took a class to get rid of it.
Oh.
And just all of these microaggressions over and over again, until I went to a Chicano literature class and I read this piece. And I was like, oh my God, it's okay to be me. I'm going to embrace myself, and I'm going to embrace my language, my Latinidad, my in-betweenness, my hybrid, everything. And so Gloria Salduga does that beautifully in essays, poems. It's like a capirotada, a little bit of everything. And it just talks about identity. And I call it the Latinx Bible, honestly. And I call it the Bible because you just have to read it. I cannot, you have to read it. Even from page 1, read it out loud. You're going to be like, whoa. Yeah, it's just really amazing. And it changed the way I write, and kind of embrace a lot of feelings that I had. And it kind of empowered me to be a better reader, better writer, and just to be who I am. And yeah. So
Very cool.
Borderlands, La Frontera.
Awesome.
It's my most recommended book as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw out a weird kind of set of recommendations, and then we'll probably only have time to do one more round. So I had the opportunity to go to El Salvador last year for the first time to do a kind of fact-finding trip for where I was working at an arts organization, and got to spend a lot of time in San Salvador and to like meet the people doing cool things, and it was really amazing. And I learned for the first time so much about the history of El Salvador's tradition of poetry and writers, and the way activism was intertwined and all that. And it just totally blew my mind, because it was such important history that affects so many people who come here to the United States. And I just had zero knowledge of it, which we have enough trouble with our own history in this country that we're not able to deal with other countries. But if anyone wants to look into Salvadoran literature, there's a poet named Roque Dalton, who was a very important, he's like their most important national poet ever. And he was very involved politically at the time of the conflicts in the late 90s, two-thirds through the 90s and later. And he was executed by the regime in the 70s, and he was still young. But if folks want to kind of dive into a different country's literary tradition outside of the US, I would really recommend looking at El Salvador and starting with him as kind of the entry point. And also in El Salvador, there's an amazing ceiling on there with all kinds of cool stuff. And there was this journal that was published semi-recently called Impudica. There were 4 editions of it. And when you flip through these journals, you see like the amazing photography that's going on there, the visual art, the poetry, the essays that are going on. This was sponsored by the Spanish government. It's really interesting there in San Salvador, the way that a lot of the European governments fund so much of the local arts community just because there isn't necessarily the local money for it. And our government is doing other things with our cultural diplomacy there right now. But I highly recommend kind of trying to dive into a different country's literary scene, and I think that's an extension and next level beyond what we've been talking about today. So that's my recommendation. So do we want to do one last rapid round? Go around the room. This has been fabulous. Yes, such a great recommendation.
Voces Sin Fronteras. I love it. I love it. Great book. This is about 16 young people that they're actually from the Latin American Youth Center here in Washington, D.C. So it's a local book, and it's in a comic, and it's a side-by-side bilingual book, and it's just really amazing. And they wrote their stories. It's kind of like memoir. So it's some of the stories is about them coming to the United States. Some others are just about things in their life. No, not everything is about immigration, but these are amazing stories, and they're local. And please support this book. Voces Sin Frontera.
And it is available in the library. We've got it, so you can check it out. Yeah.
Should I go? I was gonna talk about another Colombiana. The Veins of the Ocean by Patricia Engel. It's very good. It's fiction. And I mention it because she has a new book coming called Infinite Country in 2021. So I keep pushing these new books because I feel like it'll give us something to look forward to. We have some powerful Latinx writers coming with amazing work in 2021. And that's why we got to keep reading, and we got to keep our hope up. And that's it for me.
And I will end on the note of like reading about different places. I am bad about it. I read a lot of Mexican and Mexican American literature, and so I was really excited to read Antoras, which takes place in Uruguay, a place I know very little about. This is all thanks to Lupita, so all credit to both Lupita and Nick, because I got this at the event last year. Yes, thank you. I'm like the library thing. And it's just an amazing book. It's 5 queer women in Uruguay during the dictatorship when being queer is illegal. And it's amazing. Read it.
It is. Oh my gosh. Such a good book.
Yeah.
Such a good book.
Yay. I'm gonna be corny with my last one here. So I'm gonna go the route of kids' books. And I've got Justice Sotomayor's 2. One is called Turning Pages, My Life Story, and then the other one is called Just Ask, Be Different, Be Brave, Be You. Her books are always available in Spanish too, so I encourage folks to check that out. I mean, these books are, yes, it's a public figure doing a children's book because that's a thing they can do, but this is, she's a hugely important figure in the history of our country and the movement towards representation, and for her story to be accessible in this way for young families and for children is very, very, very special. And it's the kind of book you would want to have for having a kid, and encourage even adults to check it out, because if you don't want to read her memoir, you can read the children's version with pictures, which is appealing too. Well, this is fun. We'll have to do it again. You're all fabulous and wonderful, as I beginning and knew from the get-go. And just want to give a special shout out to a few colleagues who I know have been on here watching. Elizabeth, who works at our Glenarden Library. Also Ana Martinez, who works with us. We have so many fabulous, amazing colleagues at the library system. Just like all of our sister libraries in the area have too, DC Public, Montgomery County, Virginia's libraries, and everyone in Maryland. It's we're very fortunate to live in such a literary area. And even though we're not able to gather in person like we would like right now, these virtual spaces are really important to keep us connected. Any events that you all would like to plug that you're doing coming up before we close?
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, I will be getting to I'm so nervous. I'm going to talk to Maria Hinojoso.
So excited.
Yes.
Instagram Live. So please join us. It's free. It's on Instagram. Just go over to my account or her account, and we'll be live on September 21st at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm excited.
Very cool.
It's such a good book. Please read her book too. I mean, she has done so much for the Latinx community here. And I just think that the least you could do is go buy a copy of it after you read it from the library. So support the libraries, then go buy a copy.
Yes.
And then buy a copy for a friend too. So
And go ahead.
Yeah, I have I'm gonna be talking with Francisco Stork. He has like different books, like nine books, and on the 25th of September or 5 p.m. it's a craft talk, and you can bring alcohol, anything, and
Nice.
it's chilly. So on the 25th, I'm gonna be talking with him. It's for free as well, and you can check it on my Instagram or at the Writer Center, and you can sign in. I'll be waiting there. And also, we're studying a book club in Spanish. If you want to join, it's also on my Instagram. And we're going to start with Los Niños Perdidos de Valeria Lucelli. And yeah, we're going to start on Tuesday, actually. So if anyone's interested, just let me know.
Can you tell everyone your handle real quick? So that you can
Yeah. And I'm half writer, half bookstagrammer. At the beginning, I say, I don't know. But I don't know. Because I don't have an account just for that. It's like my life, everything is blended. So I just left it like that. Yeah. So
you're still a bookstagrammer.
Yes.
it's like I don't know where to do it.
You can tell me, I'll type it in.
Okay, cool. Because I think they're closed for us. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Ale, did you have one?
No, I don't do events. I go to all the events.
Awesome. Well, you'll be doing more with us at the very least, I'm sure.
And one day we'll do the Dignidad Literaria because we all supposed to be there, like the four of us, remember, and more writers and readers and bookstagrammers too. But one day we'll do it.
Definitely. And just the last thing to plug, the library system has a really amazing lineup of Hispanic Heritage through October 15th. We have concerts virtually for all ages. Uno, Dos, Tres Andres, which is a Latin Grammy winning ensemble that's based here, is performing a bunch of times. We have a Hispanic Scientists event for our STEM program on Friday. We've got community conversations with the county's Latino liaison, and a lot of other great content. We are Prince George is proud of all of the Hispanic members of our community, and we are all very lucky to live in this area where we have such diversity and where we can all celebrate each other. Even though El Salvador dominates everything, which is totally fine and welcome, we're not bitter. No, the Hondurans aren't bitter, but we've got my little soccer jersey here, so get the plugs in when I can. So thank you again, Ofe, Lupita, and Alejandra, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.
Okay. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.